Will an avoidant ever come back if you use no contact? It's one of the most gut-wrenching questions people ask after a breakup. If I go no contact, will they come back? But let's be honest, what they're really asking is, will pulling away finally make them realize what they lost? Especially when the person in question is avoidant, the type who runs from closeness, who shuts down the moment things get vulnerable. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Avoidants don't come back because of what you do. They come back when and if they're ready to confront their fear of intimacy. Your silence doesn't fix them. It just gives them space to finally face themselves if they choose to. But let me flip the script. No contact isn't a tactic to get them back. It's a gift to yourself. It's you saying, I will no longer chase someone who doesn't know how to receive love. I will no longer hand over my power hoping they'll wake up. Because when you stay in the chase, you're playing into the exact game avoidants thrive in, the pursuit-reject cycle. They feel safest when you want them just a bit more than they want you. So the moment you pull away, not to manipulate, but to heal, that's when the dynamic shifts. Will they come back? Maybe. But the bigger question is, do you still want them when they do? Because if they return unchanged, unreformed, still emotionally armored, then what are they really offering? A familiar pain? So no contact isn't about them. It's the reset button on your dignity, on your clarity, on your peace. If they do come back, let it be a bonus. But your life should never be on pause, waiting for someone to learn how to love you properly. When someone you care about pulls away, it's natural to want to do something, anything, to bring them back. That's why the idea of going no contact can feel both empowering and terrifying. On one hand, you're stepping away, but on the other, there's a little voice hoping that your silence might be the thing that wakes them up. The danger here is when no contact shifts from a boundary to a tactic, when it's no longer about protecting your peace, but about provoking a response. The truth is, the moment no contact becomes a ploy to manipulate someone into noticing you, it loses its power. It turns into just another version of chasing distance, just without words. Choosing no contact should never be about trying to control the outcome. It's about reclaiming your energy from a situation that's left you anxious, confused, or unappreciated. Especially when you're dealing with someone avoidant, someone who pulls away the closer you get. It's easy to get caught in a spiral of doing more, giving more, trying harder to be seen. That dynamic is exhausting. It chips away at your self-esteem and makes you believe that love is earned by proving your worth instead of being received through mutual openness. When you decide to step back, not to teach them a lesson, not to prompt a reaction, but to actually prioritize your emotional well-being, that's a game changer. It says, I matter too much to beg for breadcrumbs. It's not silence to punish them. It's distance to protect you. No contact becomes a statement of value. It's not dramatic. It's deliberate. It tells the world and yourself that you're no longer willing to shrink just to keep someone close. And here's the most powerful part. When you stop using space as a strategy and start using it as self-respect, your energy changes. You're no longer waiting, obsessing, or monitoring their every move. You're rebuilding. You're reconnecting with yourself. You're remembering that you were whole before they entered the picture, and you'll still be whole whether or not they return. So no contact, when done from the right place, becomes less about absence and more about alignment. You're not hoping they'll come back. You're hoping you'll come back to yourself. That shift from waiting on them to choosing you is where your power lives. And ironically, that's often when the person starts to notice. But by then, you'll be asking a different question. Do they even deserve a place in this new version of your life? One of the biggest misunderstandings people have when dealing with someone avoidant is believing that their silence will spark change in the other person. There's this hopeful narrative that if you just disappear long enough, they'll miss you, realize your value, and come running back, suddenly ready to love you the way you deserve. But the reality is, avoidant individuals don't respond to space in the same way others do. For many of them, distance doesn't feel alarming. It feels comfortable. It reinforces their existing belief that closeness equals danger and detachment equals safety. So when you step back hoping to create urgency, they often interpret it as relief. An avoidant doesn't come back simply because you've gone quiet. They come back only when something inside them shifts. When they decide on their own to face the discomfort of intimacy and work through it. That's not something your silence can force. That's not something any external move can trigger. It's an inner battle, and they have to choose to fight it. What's hard is accepting that your love, your patience, your presence, or your absence can't be the catalyst for their growth. It has to come from within them. That's not to say people can't change. They absolutely can. But the kind of change needed for an avoidant to truly show up emotionally open, consistent, and vulnerable is deep work. It requires a level of self-awareness and willingness most people only reach when they're ready to take accountability. And until that happens, no amount of space will create a breakthrough. In fact, sometimes space confirms what they already believed, that they're better off alone, that people always leave, or that they don't need anyone. This is why using no contact as a way to force growth in someone avoidant is usually a dead end. It keeps you emotionally tethered to their potential rather than facing their current reality. You end up waiting, hoping, checking your phone, tying your healing to their timeline. But if they do come back and nothing has changed internally, the same issues will resurface, the same distance, the same fear, the same emotional walls. The only version of them worth reconnecting with is the one who chooses growth for themselves, not the one nudged back by your absence. That kind of return only has meaning if it comes from personal insight, not pressure or guilt. So instead of asking what your silence will make them do, ask what their silence is teaching you about where they are and whether they're even capable of showing up in the relationship you truly want. When you're in love with someone who has avoidant tendencies, it often feels like you have to work twice as hard just to stay emotionally close. The more you reach out, the more they retreat. The more vulnerable you get, the more distant they become. It's a confusing, painful cycle, and it usually leaves you asking yourself what you're doing wrong. But here's the hard truth. The more you chase an avoidance, the more you're feeding into the exact dynamic that keeps them distant. You're reinforcing their fear of closeness by confirming that intimacy means pressure, expectations, and emotional responsibility. Avoidants often struggle with vulnerability because deep down, closeness triggers a sense of threat. It's not that they don't want love, they just don't know how to feel safe in it. So when someone comes in strong with affection, emotional availability, and a desire for connection, they interpret it as overwhelming. And when that happens, they retreat. This push-pull dynamic becomes a loop. You pursue, they distance, you try harder, they shut down more. Eventually you feel rejected and exhausted, and they feel validated in their belief that intimacy is suffocating. The only way to disrupt this loop is by stepping out of it entirely, not by pretending to care less or playing games, but by genuinely choosing to stop chasing someone who isn't meeting you halfway. That's where pulling back, not out of strategy, but out of self-respect, becomes powerful. It's not about making them miss you. It's about refusing to abandon yourself in an effort to hold on to someone else. The moment you stop over-perennialing in the relationship, the avoidant is left to sit with the space they've created. And in that space, one of two things happens. Either they feel relieved and move on, or they begin to feel the weight of their own emotional unavailability. But neither of those outcomes are in your control. Your role is not to manage their emotions, but to honor your own. When you stop chasing, you're no longer giving them the comfort of knowing you'll always be there, no matter how little they give in return. That's when the dynamic truly shifts. Not because you've manipulated them, but because you've changed the equation. You're no longer the one bending, proving, and overextending. You're now the one standing still, calm, and centered. waiting only for the kind of connection that doesn't require you to constantly earn it. When someone avoidant comes back after a period of no contact, it's easy to feel a wave of hope. You might think they finally realized what they lost, or this is the moment everything changes. But the truth is, a return means very little if there's been no real change. If the emotional distance, the fear of vulnerability, and the walls are still there, then their return isn't a sign of growth. It's just a loop repeating itself. And when you're in love with someone who constantly keeps you at arm's length, it's easy to mistake movement for progress. Avoidance can come back for many reasons: loneliness, comfort, nostalgia, or even guilt. But none of those reasons guarantee emotional availability. What you need to ask is not why they came back, but how they're showing up now. Are they communicating more openly? Are they able to sit with emotional discomfort without shutting down? Are they offering clarity or just dipping in and out like before? Without significant internal work, they are likely to repeat the same patterns, pulling away the moment things get too real, too close, or too emotionally demanding. And that's where people often get stuck. You may feel like taking them back is a sign of forgiveness or strength, but letting someone re-enter your life without evidence of change is just setting the stage for the same pain in a different chapter. You're not being unkind by expecting more, you're being wise. Because love, no matter how deep or nostalgic, is not enough without emotional safety. The problem is, emotional unavailability can sometimes be disguised as romantic gestures. They might say all the right things, how much they've missed you, how hard it's been without you, but words aren't growth. Change shows up in actions. It looks like consistency, communication, and the willingness to do the uncomfortable work of being vulnerable. It doesn't look like surface-level apologies or sweeping promises that don't come with behavioral shifts. So when someone avoidant returns, the question to ask yourself is not, are they back, but are they different? Have they done the work? Are they capable now of sustaining closeness without feeling threatened by it? Because if the foundation hasn't changed, all you're doing is rebuilding the same shaky structure. And that doesn't lead to connection. It leads to confusion, resentment, and more emotional exhaustion. Let their return be the start of a new story only if they've actually rewritten their own. When you go no contact with someone, especially someone with avoidant tendencies, it's easy to fall into the trap of waiting. Waiting for a message, a sign, a shift. You start living in the future, in the what-ifs, in the fantasy that maybe today will be the day they realize everything they're missing. But every day spent waiting is a day you're not living fully. It's a day you're holding your breath, putting your peace on pause, hoping someone else will finally show up in a way they haven't before. And that's a dangerous place to stay. Your sense of peace, clarity, and confidence cannot be something that hinges on another person's decisions. That kind of dependency keeps you small. It keeps you stuck in a cycle where your emotions are constantly being dictated by their actions or lack thereof. When they text, you feel high. When they don't, you spiral. That emotional roller coaster might feel like passion, but it's really instability. And that instability eats away at your self-trust, your focus, and your ability to make clear choices for your own well-being. No contact is supposed to be a healing process, not a waiting room. It's a boundary that says, I'm not going to keep checking my phone to feel worthy. It's a way to protect your energy so you can come back to yourself, not so you can anxiously track whether they'll return. Because the truth is, you don't need someone to validate your worth by choosing you later. Your value doesn't increase based on whether or not they come back. In fact, your confidence should be rooted in how you choose yourself now, even when it hurts, even when it's uncertain. What no contact offers you is the space to regain clarity. It helps you untangle your identity from someone else's inconsistency. It gives you the time to ask real questions. Am I actually happy with the version of the relationship we had? Was I being loved in a way that felt fulfilling, or was I just trying to prove I was enough? Those are the questions that matter. Not whether they'll come back, but whether they were ever truly capable of meeting you emotionally. So instead of waiting, start living. Invest in your peace. Build your clarity. Reconnect with the version of you that doesn't have to beg for effort, attention, or commitment. Because if they ever do return, they should be coming back to someone who's whole, not someone who's been standing still, hoping for a miracle. So will an avoidant ever come back if you use no contact? Maybe, but that's not the question that should guide your healing. The real question is, will you still want them back if nothing has changed? Because love isn't just about longing or history. It's about being met, being seen, being safe. No contact is not a magic trick to win someone over. It's a boundary. It's a reset. It's the line you draw to say, I choose peace over patterns. I choose myself over potential. If they come back, let them come back to a version of you that no longer chases doubts or wait. Let them come back to someone who knows their worth, who doesn't settle for crumbs when they're capable of receiving the whole feast. And if they don't come back, you still win, because you've chosen to stop losing yourself in someone else's emotional confusion. You've stopped making their fear your responsibility. You've come home to yourself, and that is a comeback no one can take from you. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to protect your heart, not just fight for it. This isn't about who walks away. It's about who you become when you stop running after those who won't stay. Take care of yourself. You deserve love that doesn't make you question your enoughness. Goodbye for now, and remember, the right people don't run when you stop chasing.